It was a cold autumn afternoon in the city. The leaves had changed colors and were falling gently from the trees. The wind was a little chilly, and people in the park were wearing jackets and scarves. Among the many people enjoying the fresh air, there was a man named David. David was a kind and simple man who worked in an office nearby. He usually came to this park during his lunch break to get some fresh air and clear his mind. He liked watching people and seeing how they spent their day. That day, as David walked slowly along the path, he noticed someone sitting alone on a wooden bench near the big oak tree. The woman looked quiet and tired. Her clothes were neat but old and a little worn out. She had a small bag beside her and she was looking down at the ground. Something about her made David stop and look closer. She did not seem like someone who belonged to the busy city crowd. She looked like she was carrying a heavy burden in her heart. David thought for a moment. He was feeling a little hungry himself, but realized that maybe this woman needed help more than he did. Without overthinking, he decided to do something kind. He went toward a small cafe close to the park entrance. The cafe was warm and smelled like fresh coffee and baked bread. David asked the young woman behind the counter to prepare a warm meal, a sandwich with fresh vegetables and chicken, and a hot cup of coffee. The woman at the cafe smiled as she packed the food, noticing the kindness in David's eyes. With the food in his hands, David walked back to the bench. The woman was still there, sitting quietly. When David reached her, he smiled gently and said, "I thought you might be hungry. Please take this." He handed her the sandwich and coffee carefully. The woman looked surprised for a moment. Then, she looked up and smiled softly. Her eyes were warm and full of gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That is very kind of you." David felt a strange happiness in his heart. He sat down on the other end of the bench, not wanting to disturb her peace, but wanting to share a moment of kindness. They did not talk much, but the silence between them was comfortable. The woman took small bites of the sandwich, and David watched as she slowly warmed up to the feeling of being cared for. After a few minutes, David realized he had to get back to work, but before he left, he said, "If you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask. Sometimes we all need a little kindness." The woman nodded, her smile growing a little brighter. "You have a good heart," she said. David walked away feeling light and happy. He did not know much about this woman, but the small act of sharing food made a big difference to both of them. For David, it was a reminder that kindness costs nothing but can mean everything. For the woman, it was a small light in a day that had been dark and lonely. What David did not realize was that this woman was someone very special. She was not just any person sitting on a bench. She was Clara, a well-known artist in the city, famous for her beautiful paintings that told stories of love, hope, and pain. But Clara was not here to be recognized or admired. She wanted to be just a simple person for a while, away from the cameras and the crowds. She wanted to feel normal, like anyone else, and David's kindness gave her that chance. As the sun began to set, David left the park with a smile on his face. He never expected to meet someone famous or important. He only wanted to help a stranger who looked like she needed it. That day, a simple act of kindness created a small, quiet connection between two very different lives. David's story is a beautiful example of how we can all make a difference. Sometimes it is the smallest things, a warm meal, a kind word, a gentle smile, that can change someone's day and even their life. In a world that can sometimes feel cold and rushed, kindness reminds us of the good that still exists. And for Clara, the woman on the bench, this simple act was a gift. It was a moment of hope and comfort she would remember for a long time, even though she never told David who she really was. Clara's life was very different from what people usually saw. To many, she was a famous artist, known for creating beautiful paintings that were shown in galleries and museums. People admired her work and often spoke about her talent. But behind all the applause and bright lights, Clara's personal life was much harder than anyone knew. She had grown up in a small town, far from the city's busy streets. Her family was not rich, but they loved each other. From a young age, Clara loved to paint. She would spend hours with her brushes and colors, creating pictures of the world as she saw it. Her dream was to share her art with many people and make them feel emotions through her work. When Clara became an adult, she moved to the city to follow her dream. Slowly, she worked hard, showing her paintings to galleries and finding people who liked her art. Her hard work paid off, and she became famous. But success did not come without challenges. The city was fast and often lonely. Clara's days became full of meetings, shows, and interviews. She had to hide her feelings and always look happy in front of others. Despite the fame, Clara felt very alone. She had lost some close family members in recent years, and her friends were busy with their own lives. The loneliness grew heavier each day. Sometimes she felt like she was living in a glass box where people saw her art, but not the person behind it. The pain she carried inside did not disappear with her fame. On the day David gave her the warm meal in the park, Clara was feeling very low. She had been walking alone for hours, trying to find a place where she could think without being noticed. The park was a quiet place where she could sit and watch the world without anyone staring at her or asking questions. When David came and offered her food, Clara was surprised by his kindness. She was used to people seeing her as a celebrity, not as a normal person who just needed a warm meal and a little comfort. For a moment, she forgot about her troubles and simply felt cared for. After that day, Clara thought a lot about David and his simple kindness. It was something she had not expected. She realized that sometimes what people need most is not fame or money, but just a kind heart that sees them as a person. Slowly, Clara started to change. She decided to take small steps to find happiness again. She spent more time outside, walking, in the park, or visiting quiet places. She met new people who cared about her as a friend, not because she was famous. Clara even started painting in new ways, using bright colors and hopeful themes to reflect the new feelings inside her. Though the road was not easy, Clara's heart grew lighter with every kind moment she experienced. She learned to accept help and friendship from people like David, who did not judge her or expect anything. Their simple acts of kindness made her stronger. Clara kept her meeting with David a secret at first. She did not want people to know she had been in such a vulnerable place. But over time, she understood that sharing this story could help others. Many people feel lonely and invisible, even if they seem to have everything. Her experience taught her that kindness is powerful. It can heal wounds and bring hope. Clara wanted to use her art not only to show beauty, but also to remind people of the importance of caring for one another. She began including stories of kindness and friendship in her paintings, hoping they would inspire others. In her heart, Clara was grateful for that cold afternoon in the park. It was a turning point for her, a moment when a stranger's kindness opened the door to healing and new beginnings. She learned that being famous did not mean she was alone, and that sometimes the simplest things could bring the greatest joy. David's small gesture had helped Clara more than he could ever know. It reminded her that kindness is a language everyone understands, and that sometimes we just need someone to show they care. From that day on, Clara carried the memory of the meal and the smile with her. It became a symbol of hope, strength, and the power of human connection. Even on difficult days, she would remember the kindness of a stranger who fed her without knowing who she was, and that made all the difference. After that cold autumn day in the park, David went back to his normal life. He had no idea how much his small act of kindness had affected Clara, the woman he had helped. For David, it was just a simple thing, buying a meal for someone who looked hungry. He didn't expect any reward or recognition. He did it because it felt right, and that was the beauty of it. David returned to his office job, where he spent most of his day working at a computer. His job was ordinary, and his life was quiet. He often thought about the woman on the bench, but never imagined she was famous or important. To him, she was just a person in need of help, and he was glad he could offer that. Meanwhile, Clara's life slowly began to change. After the kindness she received, she felt a little less alone in the world. It was as if a small light had been turned on in a dark room. For the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. That simple meal had reminded her that there are good people who care, even when life seems hard. Clara started to think differently about her own struggles. Instead of feeling stuck and sad, she began to believe that she could move forward. She realized that kindness, whether big or small, has the power to heal. It can bring light to the darkest days. Even though she didn't know David's full story, Clara felt connected to him through that moment. His kindness was a reminder that not all people are busy or careless. Some truly care about others. That idea comforted her deeply. As days passed, Clara kept going to the park. She would sit on the same bench, sometimes hoping to see David again, but mostly just enjoying the quiet and peace. She liked watching the changing colors of the leaves and hearing the soft rustling sounds. It was a place where she could feel calm and just be herself. One afternoon, Clara thought about how easy it is to forget the power of kindness in a busy world. People often rush past each other without noticing who might need help. Clara wanted to change that. She wanted to remind others that a small act, a smile, a helping hand, or even a meal can mean more than anyone realizes. Clara began to share her feelings through her art. She painted pictures that showed simple acts of kindness between strangers, people helping one another without expecting anything in return. Her paintings became more personal and meaningful. They were no longer just beautiful images. They were messages of hope and love. At the same time, David's life continued in its quiet way. He still visited the park during his lunch breaks and sometimes thought about the woman he had helped. Though he didn't know who she was, he hoped she was doing better. His simple act had made him feel happy inside, and he wished more people would choose kindness every day. One day, David's co-workers talked about a news story they had heard. It was about a famous artist who had been seen sitting alone in the park, quietly accepting help from a stranger. The story touched many people because it showed how important kindness is, no matter who you are. David was surprised when he heard the story. He never thought his small action would become news or inspire others, but he felt proud. He realized that his simple meal had made a difference not only to Clara, but to many others who heard about it. The story spread quickly in the city, and people started talking about how kindness can change lives. Many began to notice the people around them more carefully, offering help where it was needed. Clara and David's encounter became a symbol of hope in a busy, often lonely world. For Clara, the memory of that meal remained special. It was a turning point in her life. It reminded her that she was not alone and that good people exist everywhere, even in unexpected places. It showed her that kindness can heal wounds and bring people together. For David, the experience showed that anyone can make a difference. You don't have to be famous or rich to help others. All it takes is a kind heart and the willingness to act. Though they didn't speak much after that day, the bond between David and Clara grew stronger in their hearts. They shared a quiet connection, a moment when two strangers met and changed each other's lives forever. This story teaches us all an important lesson. Kindness matters. It reminds us to look around and see who might need a little help. Because sometimes, a simple act, like feeding a stranger, can have a powerful impact that lasts a lifetime. After a few days, Clara's assistant happened to mention something interesting during a conversation at David's workplace. The assistant had noticed Clara sitting quietly in the park, far from the busy city life, and she had seen a stranger offer her food. This simple event caught the attention of many people who knew Clara and cared about her. It wasn't every day that a famous artist was seen like this, sitting alone and accepting kindness from a stranger. When David's co-workers heard the story, they were surprised and curious. They knew David as a humble man who rarely talked about his personal life. Now, hearing that he had quietly helped Clara, the famous artist, made them see him in a new light. To them, David's small act of kindness became something very special. The news started to spread around the city. Local newspapers and social media shared the story of how a simple meal from a stranger had touched Clara deeply during a difficult time. Many people were inspired by this tale. It showed that kindness does not depend on who you are, how rich you are, or how famous you might be. It only depends on the willingness to care. Clara later decided to share her experience openly. She wanted people to understand that even someone who looks strong and successful can have moments of weakness. She explained that day in the park was one of those moments for her. She wanted to remind others that everyone needs kindness sometimes, no matter their background. When Clara told her story, many people were moved. They saw her not just as an artist, but as a real person with real feelings. Her honesty helped others feel less alone with their own struggles. She showed that accepting help is not a sign of weakness, but a step toward healing. David, on the other hand, remained modest. He never asked for praise or attention. For him, helping Clara was simply the right thing to do. Even when people praised him for his kindness, he smiled quietly and said, "Anyone can do this. It's easy to help." Clara and David's story became a reminder for the whole city. It taught people to slow down and notice those around them. It encouraged simple acts of kindness like sharing food, offering a smile, or listening carefully. The story spread in schools, workplaces, and homes, inspiring many to be more thoughtful and caring. Because of the attention, Clara and David met again, but this time in a different way. They were invited to a small event where people shared stories about kindness. Clara spoke about her experience and how a stranger's help had made a big difference. David was there too, and they both spoke quietly but warmly. They became friends, connected by the simple but powerful moment they shared. Their friendship grew over time. Clara invited David to visit her art studio, where she showed him her paintings and explained the feelings behind them. David shared stories about his life and how he believed kindness was something everyone could give. Together, they learned from each other and found joy in the small things. This new connection brought more meaning to both their lives. Clara began to volunteer, quietly in her community, inspired by David's humble spirit. She helped people who were struggling, just like she once had been. David found joy in knowing that his small act had started something bigger than he imagined. Their story also showed people that kindness does not always need to be grand or public. Sometimes the quiet, unseen moments are the most important. A simple meal, a gentle word, or a helping hand can change a life in ways we cannot always see. The city started to celebrate kindness more. Schools taught children about caring for others, and workplaces encouraged small acts of help among co-workers. Clara and David's story was told and retold as an example of how two strangers, brought together by chance, could inspire an entire community. Through it all, Clara and David remained humble. They did not seek fame or attention. They were simply two people who chose kindness on one cold afternoon and kept that kindness alive in their hearts. Their story reminds us all that in a busy world, kindness is a powerful force. It connects people, heals wounds, and builds bridges between different lives. No matter who we are, we all have the power to make a difference with small, simple actions. As time passed, the simple act of kindness that David showed Clara became more than just a story. It became a lasting connection that changed both their lives in quiet but important ways. They continued to live their own lives, but now with a deeper understanding of each other and the power of kindness. Clara found herself feeling stronger and more hopeful than before. The moment when David offered her food had reminded her that even in the darkest times, there is light to be found in simple kindness. This gave her the courage to face her problems differently. Instead of shutting herself away, she began to open up to friends and to new people who cared for her. Inspired by this change, Clara started to give back to others quietly. She volunteered at local shelters, helped with community events, and sometimes organized small art classes for children who could not afford lessons. She wanted to share the warmth she had felt from David's kindness with others who needed it. David, too, felt the effect of their connection. Though his life was still quiet and simple, he began to notice the small chances he had each day to help others. He carried a little extra food or warm drink in his bag, just in case he saw someone who looked hungry or cold. His small actions became part of his daily life. Sometimes David and Clara would meet at the park again. They didn't need to say much because their shared experience spoke louder than words. Their friendship grew slowly but surely, built on respect and understanding. They learned from each other's strengths and supported each other's weaknesses. People around them noticed the change too. Clara's art became more hopeful, filled with light and colors that spoke of friendship and care. David's kindness inspired others at his workplace to think more about those in need. The ripple effect of their meeting touched many lives, spreading kindness in ways neither of them had imagined. Their story became a reminder that sometimes small moments can lead to great things. A simple act, a warm meal, a smile, a few kind words can open the door to friendship, healing, and hope. It showed that kindness does not have to be grand to be powerful. Often, the quiet moments of care mean the most. One cold morning, as the city began to wake up, Clara and David sat together on the same bench where they first met. The leaves had fallen, and the park was peaceful. They talked about their journeys, how a simple meal had changed everything for both of them. Clara said softly, "I never thought something so small could make such a difference. You didn't know who I was, and that made it even more special. You saw me as a person, not a celebrity." David smiled and replied, "I didn't need to know. I just saw someone who needed help, and I did what anyone should do." That moment captured the true meaning of their story. Kindness without judgment or expectation. It was pure and simple, and it had the power to heal hearts and bring people together. As they sat in the quiet park, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the changing seasons, Clara and David understood that their meeting was more than chance. It was a reminder of what it means to be human, to care, to share, and to connect. Their story became an example for many others. It inspired people to look around and find small ways to help. It taught that everyone, no matter their background or status, deserves kindness and respect. In the end, the simple act of feeding a stranger became a beautiful journey of friendship, hope, and change. David and Clara showed the world that sometimes the smallest gestures carry the greatest meaning. Their story is a gentle reminder for all of us to be kind every day, because we never know how much a simple act might mean to someone else. And, in kindness, we find the true connection that brings us closer and makes life better for everyone.